What's going on, everyone? So we have some updates in regards to Zach Lavine and the Chicago Bulls. So Zach Lavine is still very much on the trade market, and the Chicago Bulls are continuing to look for suitors for Zach Lavine. Market is essentially non-existent currently at the moment. Obviously, if trades start happening, guys start getting moved around, maybe a team eventually comes along and goes, hey, you know what, let's take a flyer on Zach Lavine. Right now, no real trades have happened outside of, and at least in free agency, outside of sign-in trades for players. Obviously, before free agency, you had Mikal Bridges going to the Knicks, but that was an insane overpay where a lot of people were like, is that going to affect and impact the market? And then you ended up having DeJounte Murray going to the Pelicans. But again, that wasn't in free agency. That was right before free agency. In free agency, all you've seen so far are just, hey, I don't want to take a mid-level exception. I want to get paid. Sign and trade me to a team that I want to go to. And with that, DeMar DeRozan ended up going to the Sacramento Kings, and the Chicago Bulls ended up getting a few seconds. So the Chicago Bulls are trying to add those seconds, try to make a trade for Zach Lavine rather than giving up a first. Remember, there were reports earlier that the Chicago Bulls would be interested in giving up a first. Now, this is where I think the Lakers could come in. I don't think that it's a rush to go do so. And to me, if you could pull off several other trades, then I'd rather do that. But I really like the idea of Zach Lavine, right? I genuinely think that he would come in. I think he's arguably the best fit and skill set of what we need. There are concerns, though, right? The injury history, which I do think some people greatly overblow, right? He hasn't been a model of health, but outside of this season, he was supposed to come back and finish the season. Then the Detroit Piston rumors happened, and he was like, yeah, I'm not going to Detroit. And then you look at the previous years, and he played 77 games. He played 70 games. He's playing around 65 games, which is basically average for a star. The other part is just his contract. And it's the risk that comes with Zach Lavine. Again, Zach Lavine is a real ceiling raiser, in my opinion, for the Lakers. I just think he'd fit in and be seamless. Right? And he showed when he came back with Chicago last year that he was willing to kind of buy in and do whatever was necessary in the role. You saw him and his assist totals go up. You saw him become more of a playmaker. You saw him kind of playing more off ball and willing to adjust. If he could kind of translate that last few games that you saw with Chicago before he was like, I'm not going to Detroit, and translate that with the Lakers, I think that would be tough, right? And with that, also his defense, should mention that, he actually is a very solid defender. I wouldn't say he's great. I wouldn't say he's elite or anything like that. But when he's locked in, engaged, and focused, he actually is very good defensively, right? He's a guy that can get after it. He's got the athleticism. He's got the size. He's got the length. He's got the quickness, the lateral movement, all of the things that you want to be a good defender. So if he can buy in on that side and then be that offensive threat, which he may be more willing to buy in on the defense side because he won't have to handle as much of an offensive workload. Again, you saw him buying more defensively when he came back because you had Kobe White who really stepped up and emerged for them, and then obviously DeMar DeRozan, to where he wasn't responsible for having to go drop 50, right? So that was a big difference. But for the Lakers, again, the Lakers don't have to rush. Zach Lavine, more likely than not, is not going anywhere. Right? Zach, a lot of these teams, the Spurs and stuff they're already basically using their cap space. There are still teams out there that could absorb him, like a team like Detroit. But at the end of the day, it's is that what's best for them? Is that what's best for these organizations? How many teams are willing to take on? If he was an expiring contract, I think Chicago would have all kinds of suitors. But the fact that he still has, 3 more years on his deal, I just don't see somebody going and doing that, especially for 2 seconds. So to me, if I'm the Lakers, I'm continuing to focus on, can you get a Jeremy Grant? Can you get a Cam Johnson? Right? Can you go get a Walker Kessler? Right? Can you work one of those deals out, or maybe multiple of those deals out? And then if all else fails, go take a flyer on Zach Lavine. But if you're the only team, now you have the leverage because you don't have to go trade for Zach Lavine. So if I'm the Lakers, and let's say everything else falls through, I still want that first. Oh, and I still want those 2 seconds, right? Or I want, AO or whatever, right? I want something of value beyond 2 seconds. I'm not taking on, what is it, 120 million or whatever it is over the next 3 years. And you have the injury concerns, and you have that, like, hey, we could end up being stuck with him, right? And so I want a first and I want 2 seconds, and we'll gladly take him off. And then at that point, you kind of mitigate your risk, right? Because if it works, you're looking great, right? If it doesn't work, then yeah, you're probably stuck with him, but he fits LeBron and AD's timeline. And when he is healthy, I do believe it works. The only way I see it not really working is again, he can't stay healthy. He can't stay on the basketball court. But you're probably not getting somebody much better than him anyway. And what other moves are you making, unless you're making multiple, that is going to make you a bona fide contender and raise the ceiling to the level that Zach Lavine can? Right? Like, Zach Lavine genuinely could raise the ceiling enough to where the Lakers could be in contention. I'm not saying that it's a lock and it's a guarantee, but he is, with his dynamic ability to apply rim pressure and score the basketball, play off ball. He's one of the best off ball catch and shoot shooters in the league. So playing alongside LeBron James, playing alongside Anthony Davis, that's something of incredible value. Again, like, there's, outside of like a superstar, there's very few like stars that have that ceiling raiser that Zach Lavine can provide. That's why he's been, outside of lately with Chicago, and one of the reasons why he got the contract, he has been that guy. He's not a number one option. He's probably not even a number two option. But as your third option, there's very few that would probably be better in the league, right? So to me, it's like, if you can go and get somebody like that can really raise the ceiling and really impact the Lakers, and if it works, now, even if you're not like a lock contender, you definitely, instead of having a puncher's chance, are throwing haymakers, right? I mean, if we had a healthy Zach Lavine against Denver this past series, we probably beat Denver, right? Because you got to think, like, Austin Reeves was incredibly inconsistent. D'Angelo Russell was incredibly inconsistent. Rui Hachimura was essentially non-existent, right? Like, if you basically took them off and put in Zach Lavine and basically got his average, then you probably beat Denver. Right? And the thing is you wouldn't have to, like, you're just essentially matching salaries. And on top of matching salaries, you're getting assets back. So, and you could still do another move. You could still, like, what if you still go get Walker Kessler? Or, supposedly the Utah Jazz, they want 2 firsts for Kessler. Okay, well, what if you basically went and traded for Zach Lavine? You got that first from Chicago in a couple seconds. You reroute that first to Utah to go get Walker Kessler. You bring in Walker Kessler. Now you got Zach Lavine and Walker Kessler. You addressed your center position for now and the future. You added a legit ceiling raiser in Zach Lavine, and you'd still have tradable pieces and assets, right? Like, because at that point, again, you're giving up whatever you need to match salary. Chicago's not in a position to be like, oh, we want Rui and Reeves and all that. No, like, you're going to have to give up Rui because that's $17 million. You're giving up Gabe Vincent. There's $11 million. So now you're talking, you're talking $28 million. Got to get another $12 million in cap space. You're probably sending out D'Angelo Russell, right? So between Gabe Vincent, D'Angelo Russell, and Rui Hachimura, you clear Zach Lavine, right? And they probably have to throw in another piece or two. Or maybe you're doing D'Lo, Rui, and, you'd have to do something like D'Lo, Rui, and, Gabe Vincent. Probably want to do it. Because I would say you could, like, stack a couple guys, but at that point, like, then it's like, what team is going to want to take on Gabe Vincent? So to me, just get rid of that. You keep Vandal, which you could move off of if you needed to, like for Jeremy Grant or something, or Cam Johnson, right? Like, you'd still have the pieces necessary to go get another move, right? You go get a Dorian Finney-Smith. You go get, like I said, a Cam Johnson, and still, like, bring in Zach Lavine, bring in Walker Kessler. And I mean, you don't even have to bring anybody in from Chicago. Like, you could just do something where you're taking on Lavine, and now, like, you clear the extra $5 million or whatever that you need to get the taxpayer mid-level. Go get Walker Kessler, right? Or maybe Utah will take on Gabe Vincent if they can get 2 firsts, right? So maybe you could, like I said, reroute Chicago's first to them, give up your first, maybe even give them the, lift the protection so that way you can bring in Walker Kessler and maybe even salary dump a little more, or unload a couple vet minimum guys or something, right? Now you clear up some roster spots because the Lakers are interested in Spencer Dinwiddie. The Lakers are interested in Gary Trent Jr. What if, like, when all is said and done, you get Spencer Dinwiddie, Gary Trent Jr., Walker Kessler, Zach Lavine, and then, maybe, like I said, you can go turn Vando or something. I would like to keep Vando at that point, but the Lakers are shopping Vando. But I don't know, maybe you could take a piece or two and go get another like 3-and-D guy, right? Like I said, like a Dorian Finney-Smith or something. I don't know. It's just, the point is that there's flexibility, right? There's options there. And a lot of it could hinge on, nothing else coming through. I would still probably go the route of like Jeremy Grant. Like if you get Jeremy Grant, Walker Kessler, and like a Colin Sexton, or if you get like Cam Johnson, Walker Kessler, and Jeremy Grant, right? Like I'd probably rather do that because I think that you'd get the same level of ceiling raise. You'd be better defensively, right? Like I still don't worry about the fit. I think the fit would be fine with those guys. But also, if it doesn't work with any of those guys, all those guys still have a level of value that's higher than Zach Lavine's, right? Because like, Cam Johnson, you could probably still trade for another piece. Jeremy Grant, there's still other teams that would probably be interested in Jeremy Grant, so you might be able to trade him for a different piece. Walker Kessler would still have maintained some value, so you could trade him if it doesn't work out. Whereas Zach Lavine, you're basically stuck for 3 years. But again, like if that's worst case scenario, if that's like break glass in case of emergency, I don't think that that's that bad. I really don't, right? Like I think it solves a lot of your issues. You can still go make other moves. You get other assets, even if like momentarily that's the only move you make, right? Like let's say you just go, say nothing else is really working out or nothing else is really worth it. You go trade for Zach Lavine and you get a first in say 2 seconds, right? Well, now you have 3 firsts to trade. You have 6 seconds to trade, if I'm not mistaken, because I think they had 5. They used 1, so they'd have 4, right? They used the 1 on Bronny James. So you have 4 seconds plus the 2 that you had. So you'd have 3 firsts, 6 seconds, and 3 pick swaps, plus several guys that you could use to trade to go and get, another piece. Or if a star becomes available that maybe makes sense next to Zach Lavine and stuff like that, maybe you could work something out. I mean, obviously, depends on the star and the cost, but like you'd still have like, if push came to shove, you'd still have Austin Reeves that you could trade. You still have like Jared Vanderbilt you could trade. Still have like JHS and a couple other random guys, right? You could probably get to another 25 to 30 million in salary. So if one of those guys comes up where it's like, man, this guy, he could be the difference maker, right? You never know. You never know what's going to be available at the trade deadline. So, I mean, even if worst case scenario, again, you just get Zach Lavine, I don't really see that as like a worst case scenario. You get assets that you can use for now in the future. It's kind of a win-win, right? You get a piece that raises the ceiling, and you get assets that now are beneficial for your future, whether that's via trade or you're just drafting guys and developing them and so on and so forth. So I like the idea, but as always, I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you like the idea of Zach Lavine on the Lakers? Do you think no, stay away from Zach Lavine, too much of a risk? What would the return have to be for you to do that? Like, would the 2 seconds and a first be enough for you to take Zach Lavine? Right? Because again, like, it's like, what is if you're the Lakers, you don't have to trade for him. So it's like, how badly do you want to get off of Zach Lavine? Like you're hitting the reset button, you're rebuilding. Zach Lavine's not happy. You're not happy with Zach Lavine. Like, it's only going to get worse. Right now, we'll do it for a first and 2 seconds. If later you come and you're like, hey, okay, we changed our mind. Well, now it's 2 firsts, right? Like, otherwise, keep them, right? Like, Chicago's not in a position of leverage, right? They're not in a position where it's like, oh, we want this. No, it's like, keep them, right? Like, so I just think the Lakers would have a lot of just leverage and control in that type of trade. But again, how you feel, whatever your thoughts are, love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.